All right, hey everybody. Oscar Arbalu here. This is our first video. This is Ricardo and I, doing what we said we were gonna do. We dropped that first video for y'all. Thought it was super important. Felt really compelled, and here we are putting something together so that we can, get this conversation kicked off between Ricardo and I for right now, and we'll see who else jumps in the future. But before we go into a little bit more deep dive, Ricardo, my brother, how you doing tonight?
I'm doing great, my brother. Just introduce myself real quick. My name is Ricardo Reyes. I am the executive director of Vets Forward. I have been doing, work in the immigration field for a long time, for about 10 years. And then I've also been, active on social media as a Chicano Marine. So that's where I'm at right now.
That's what's up. That's what's up. And for me, I think we kind of went into intros before, but yeah, a little deeper dive, man, like you just did. For me in this space, I've been in politics maybe almost a little less than 10 years. It's been like drinking water through a fire hose. Started out in Southeast Michigan, did some campaign work. And the beauty of that campaign work is it put me on people's doorsteps and I got to see some real stuff, right? People who really needed help, how to serve communities, how to really listen and pay attention to stuff like that. And so I think a lot of that work has helped me kind of be in spaces like this, chop it up with you, right? And be like, all right, here's the topic. How do we listen to ourselves and then listen to other people? Because we can just, peel this thing back just a little bit, but we need to hear other folks' insight. I'm currently in between jobs, but that's okay. That's giving me a little bit more time to be able to do this. So I'm really happy that we got this time. And let me kind of break it down what we're doing, right? We kind of said that first video, we're gonna talk about machismo. Um, it's we're doing this because of the moment. This big impact. I think for a lot of male figures, with Cesar Chavez, kind of took us by surprise. Really hurt a lot of folks. Um, and we're doing a lot of Latino males are doing a lot of reflecting, right, on how do we become better. And Ricardo and I, being that we're good friends and we work in the same spaces, we hit each other up and we feel like, yo, bro, how do you feel about this? Like, yeah, not we both agree we're not feeling that great, but we felt compelled to say something, right? Here's a terrible, terrible moment that we want to change, not even necessarily change, but like have a conversation that comes in about Latino males on the non-toxic side or expose some stuff and then maybe even give some positive things. But that's what we're trying to do. We're talking about machismo and what we plan for the future. We don't know. Let's just see where this goes. Is this, 4 or 5 little videos of this? Maybe. There's obviously a lot of unpacking to do in machismo. Let's see who else comes in. We can get some folks talking instead of us running our mouths because we're not the experts, but we're just trying to do something here tonight at 10 o'clock at night after having a long day with the kids on my end. I got a 3-year-old and a 2-year-old, so it's a lot of work, a lot of running around. And Ricardo, I'm sure you're pretty busy as well, being an executive director. You ready to do this?
Yeah, bro, let's go. Yeah,
All right.
it can be a little daunting sometimes, but we're getting through it. We're
All
getting
right.
through it. So real quick, right? Like, what are we talking about? First of
Yep.
all, I think
Yep.
we need to set a baseline of what is machismo.
Yep.
So one of the things that the definition that we were able to find, definition that we were able to like come up with, right? Machismo is a cultural concept most often associated with Latin American and Latino communities.
Yep.
This refers to a set of beliefs and behaviors about what it means to be a man. So basically, at a core definition, at its simplest, machismo is the expectation that men should embody dominance, strength, control, and authority, especially over women and the family.
Yeah.
So to me, this goes to, basically what happened 2 weeks ago, right? We found out it hurts because we found out that with this huge icon of the Latino community, Cesar Chavez, was accused of all these things. And it wasn't just accusations. And I think that's part of the problem is like people see it and they're like, oh, those are just accusations. Some people don't want to believe it. This was like a 5-year investigation where they went through hundreds of emails. They interviewed like 60 people. They interviewed a bunch of people who worked with Cesar Chavez directly. And then they corroborated the stories between like the women, for example, right? Like one of the women was a 13-year-old girl, like she was 13 when it happened. And she was like, yeah, I was with him from this day to this day to this day. And then they went and they corroborated that with other people. Like, yeah, she's right. Like she was there with him. And yeah, she was in this room with him by herself. And it sucks because we see that like toxicity from that situation that happened with Cesar Chavez, where he was a womanizer, but on top of that, like he was abusing children, right? And people were quiet about it. And that's what bothers me the most is that because of that culture of like, hey, you got to protect the leader at all costs, like he's doing too much good to expose him. And even Dolores Huerta said that, the reason that she didn't speak up earlier is because she was scared that it was going to undermine the movement of, the farm workers movement, that it was going to everything because nobody would, not only that, the other women did try to speak before.
Yeah.
The ones that were the little girls when it happened to them, they tried to speak about it and people didn't believe them. So people are like, well, why did they wait till now? They didn't wait till now. Now it's coming out because of this investigation, but I think also the legitimacy of Dolores Huerta coming out and speaking. And with her, it's also, that dominance from him. He was her boss. He was her boss. He had direct, up to him whether she was going to be successful in her work or not. There were situations where he like yelled at her. There's recordings from the board meetings where he was yelling at her, basically like calling her stupid because there were like some lost funds or misappropriation of funds or something like that. I
Yeah.
don't know exactly what it was, but the whole point is that that situation, you could boil it down to the culture of machismo protected Cesar Chavez. The culture of like the men keeping quiet, the culture of telling the women like, hey, you can't say anything because he's doing too much good. Just because you create a movement, it doesn't give you the right to then abuse people within that movement. And just because, the man is the one that, was the face of this, it created a culture where the women felt subservient to him. And to me, that is all like the machismo culture that goes around that. And I'm sure there's a lot more that we can say about it, but in its purest form, it was just like men exerting dominance over women. And to me, that was like the biggest problem. But I know there's like other examples. Probably I don't know if there's something that you can maybe think of, Oscar, that you maybe current events
Yeah.
that's going on now
There's no,
that you want to talk about.
yeah, man, and that's and obviously that's the main thing that propelled us to this, and that's a great example of the dominance part, right? And I really appreciate like let's start scratching the surface on the dominance part, but yeah, other things that we can see that just fucking blows my mind, right? In the dominant spheres of it all, and we still see it in the bravado and the the big chest pumping and everything. I mean, we see a war going on right now, man. You know what I'm saying? Like, I'm not going to get into too much detail, but when you look at it from the top lines, from what you see from both parties or the parties involved, there's a big party involved that's just thumping their chest, saying they're going to take over, so they're about to obliterate. And that kind of tips the hand on who we're talking about. But that compared to the opposite side of it, right? So one of the other players is just watching that, right? Is that dominance, that overt, right? That exaggerated form of dominance. What is it doing? Is that the thing that's going to force everybody to do the thing? And quite frankly, we don't know, right? A lot of folks are out there trying to guess and kind of play politics and see what could maybe happen, but nonetheless, we don't know. It just seems like there's this really big. It reminded me of it, right? The machismo. The no, we're better, we're bigger, got bigger guns, brah, brah. No, it's not like it's so far it's not working. So we'll see what happens. But yeah, man, that's kind of the other example that can kind of come to mind when it comes to like that thick, toxic feeling of dominance.
Yeah. And I think to bring it into, something more personal that maybe people can relate to a lot more
Yeah.
is our families, right? Like I know I've seen examples in my family about, maybe machismo, maybe you didn't really recognize it as machismo, you just recognize it as maybe bullying or someone like trying to exert dominance over someone in your family.
Yeah.
Like, you got anything on that?
Yeah, man, you were talking about it a little bit, right? For me, I won't say, what part of the family. I'm not going to say, even their identifier of like, if they're a primo or whatnot. But my dad, when I remember growing up, witnessing a lot of people in the family, you know, it just kind of like, push them over, try to be a pushover, try to test them, right? Try to mess with them. all the time, right? And it was like a friendly way, and then get him a drink, but still like had this passive aggressive, or sometimes even overtly aggressive way of just trying to like one up him and say something, crack a joke, and my dad would just be like, whatever. He didn't care. My dad wasn't trying to prove anything, right? And at the moment, I guess as a little kid, I didn't really notice like I didn't say, oh, my dad was getting punked, but I just noticed the difference between everybody else, trying to be up and kind of even push me around as a little kid. Oh, that's Oscar's kid, kind of push him around. But yeah, my dad didn't, I don't think my dad had anything he had to prove. He had a solid job, thankfully, right? Thankful for that. He had a good woman. Well, I think it was a good woman, right? As my mom. He took care of his family, took care of me and my brother. Um, and that was maybe enough for him. And the fact is, my brother and me and my brother are half, right? And so like here's the step kid for him, and he just stepped up and said, "Oh, this is my new kid. He's gonna take that. This is, I'm gonna call this person my wife, my partner." And he just had that. And because of the definition of being the man is dominance, then you got someone who's calm and steady and not playing the game to everyone else that can maybe feel like a threat. And maybe they saw him as soft, like a goody two shoes. But now I look at it a bit different. Right now, they're probably looking at it different that he wasn't soft. He just didn't feel the need to dominate anybody. And maybe at the end of the day, he just didn't want to waste that energy. You feel me? Um, yeah, man. I mean, I just think that's it. With my
Mhm.
dad, I just watched other folks, and in the moment, what's a trip? In the moment, you see like that moment of toxicity, but then when you look at it over time, you just kind of see different lives and how they kind of muster up. And that's where I'm coming from, Ricardo. Like in that moment, you see, oh, they're talking shit about my dad. But then when you look at it over time, I'm like, oh, I see, right? All these folks were just trying to, mess with him. But that was just keeping it cool, keeping it 100 the entire way. Less stress, right? Less family drama, all that good stuff. So, yeah.
Yeah. No, that's a good example, bro. And I think for me, it's mostly like the cultural part of it, right? Like being Mexican, I think, and I think a lot of people like the Chicanos, even like the first generation, second generation, can maybe have the same example of. For me, it was more like the unspoken dominance. It was, and
Mm,
maybe it's not. Maybe dominance is the wrong word for this.
mm,
But I think we all know as like Latinos, right? Like the women are the ones that are supposed to like serve the males.
yeah.
Growing up, my tias, my primas, my mom, it was like their job to like we all the men would sit down at the table or like shoot the shit, drink a beer, and the women would come. They would cook the food. They would come and serve the men.
Yeah.
And maybe it wasn't maybe toxic per se, right? But it is an example of, like the men were just expecting the
Yeah.
women to serve them. And that's something that I saw with my family. That's something that I even saw when with my first marriage, right? Like my ex, her mom would be like, hey, Ricardo's sitting down, go serve him. And even my mom would be like, hey, go serve my son.
Yeah.
She's, Chicana from East LA. She's like, I'm not gonna do that.
Yeah.
And I think that's something that we passed on, like the defiance of that, right? Because I wasn't really like that. I didn't really ever like expect that from her. So we passed that on to my daughter. My daughter's a big feminist, like, right? Like she's like, I am woman, hear me roar.
Yeah.
And like I'm proud of that. And I like to think that I had a part in teaching her to be like that, to teaching her to be like, hey, you don't need a man. Like you can be on your own and you can be, there's a dominant figure, in your own community or just among, just in your own life. Like you don't have to have a man, you don't have to serve anyone. You can just be you and have impact in others people's lives and be happy with your life. So to me, I think that's the big thing. And I don't know, bro, like it's something that we need to me, that's something that we need to break. Like
Yeah.
we need to make sure that our girls understand
Yeah.
that they are valuable, and not just in the like, oh, you're my princess, I love you, I'm gonna take care of you.
Yeah.
Also, like, hey, you know what? You're strong enough to fucking take care of yourself too. Like, you don't need a dude to fucking tell you what to do.
Yeah.
You figure that shit out on your own.
Yeah.
And I think that's one of the problems that we still have in the culture, right? Like, we still kind of teach our girls that they need to take care, and then also we teach our boys that like, hey, it's your job. I still do that. Like my two boys, their job, they know their number one job is to take care of their sister.
Yeah.
And that comes from me knowing that, like, hey, like as men, I was taught like we have to protect our women.
Yeah.
To me, there are some good parts, right, that we talked about to the whole machismo thing. Like to me, that's one of the good things is like I think in the Latino culture, the men protect the women.
Yeah.
To a point to a point where it's probably fucking like toxic.
Yeah.
But the men protect the women. The
Yeah.
men are like we're supposed to be the providers, and that's the part of the culture that I saw from my dad. My dad was like, "You're the man. You need to protect them. You need to be the provider. Everything is on you." But then at the same time, like that shit what wears you out, bro.
Yeah.
Like you having that pressure of like it's all on you, whether the woman helps or not.
Yeah.
So like ultimately, if there's failures as far as like finances or anything like that in the family, the male is usually the one that takes that. He takes he takes the brunt of the blame.
Yeah.
And that that's is part of that machismo culture that we have to be the ones that pull the family forward when it could as he's just as easily be the women that are the ones that come out and the family elevates because of them. It doesn't always have to be the male.
Yeah.
But I think to me, like that's where I saw it.
Yeah, man, I'm really, there's a couple of things you said, Ricardo, that make a whole lot of sense. And into some of the stuff that we kind of researched as well. The cultural part about pressure, right? The Latino part as a whole. And then even as you were talking, I was thinking about like the other part too that's a trip about our culture is that we have kind of one foot in America and one foot in back in our respective countries, right? You being Mexicano, me being Peruvian American. Like there's still family dynamics that loop in back there that kind of counteract or when they see certain things or when there is the cultural difference of being Latino American compared to being Latino in the country, said country. But so kind of going down that route about what you were saying about like the expectation about the dominance part, we had a scholar. I looked up a scholar, right? Professor of sociology at USC, Biret Handegu Sotelo. How did I say it? I said it wrong, huh?
No, you did it right. You said it right. So
For folks who don't know, we were battling about how to say that. It was the one thing I couldn't say right for some reason. I wanted to add an L.
I was like, how? That's the Spanish part. How do you have a problem with the Spanish part?
um, who is an expert, right? This professor is an expert at Mexican undocumented immigration to the US, Latino labor in Los Angeles, women, gender, and immigration, paid domestic work, amnesty legalization, employer sanctions, immigrant rights movements. And for this conversation, a big thing, why this professor, is important in this conversation is that she's been cited a lot on Latino masculinity, gender roles, and power studies. In the studies that she's shown about migration, family, and the cultural shape of male identity. In her book, Gender Transitions, Mexican Experiences of Immigration, she examines how Latino men and women renegotiate gender roles, right? With the original roles being the men as a provider, the men as the authority figures. So, after doing a little bit of a dive into that, and there's so many more other books, right? This is kind of the beauty of Ricardo and I starting this is like, oh man, there's this book and then there's that book, and there's just so many things and so many people we can talk to. But I mean, her research shows that what we call machismo comes from how men are expected to have the authority at the home, to lead, to decide, to be in charge. And I can speak for myself, as for me, and I think maybe even Ricardo, nobody ever told us, me, where that line of leading was and then when was controlling, right? As we were doing this, Ricardo and I were like, yeah, damn, that makes sense. I wonder, is the controlling part like a lack of trust? Again, we only have our own experiences. We want to hear from other folks.
Yeah.
Can there be a lack of trust? It's, oh, I gotta be in charge. I gotta be in charge. And all you do is start listening to yourself, and you don't necessarily, ask your partner, hey, how are we going to do this? How are we going to do that? To what Ricardo also said, on top of all these pressures that are on top, can the economic impact, right? That can change. If you got a good paying job and everybody got a little bit of food in their mouth and they don't got to be, kicking back in something super sporty in a car, And I thought car, I thought super sporty. And I'm like, what did I roll in? Me and my family, I remember we rolled the three vehicles I remember as a kid. One was a station wagon, bright yellow. I just have a vague remembrance of that. The second one I remember was my dad getting a van, full on like van, right? Like creeper van. But they customized it because he got a good job. My dad ended up getting a good job at the airport. He customized the inside with a bunch of leftover like airport like seats and carpet. And so my dad had a bench seat sideways, not right the right way facing traffic, but the other way from the airport inside there. Um, but yeah, like you know what I'm saying? Like we were doing all right, so maybe that pressure wasn't there. And so the trust in my dad had already kind of with the family, with my brother then and my mom before I came into the picture. You know, maybe that kind of just diffused the pressure. You said it, right? The pressure of like, shit, I gotta provide, shit, I gotta do this. It was just kind of already working itself out, you know. So what do you think, man?
Real quick, off subject, but it's funny how you mentioned the van. Because that's kind of when I knew that we made it. Was my dad came home one day, bro. My dad came home one day with like an Econoline 150, right? Like a fucking
Talking about.
all out fucking van.
That's what I'm
And it
talking
came out with like that custom paint job. It was like the line, the blue line that went like up, down, and forward.
know
Dude,
about that trim.
yeah, dude. And then and he did the same thing. He fucking like then like he fucking customized it. Like he fucking dropped it. He put some fat wheels on it. And it was funny that like that's just like the look that we like. We like the fucking fat wheels that stuck
Yeah.
out of the car, right? With the fucking like almost spoke looking fucking rim. I don't think they were spokes, but you know what, like lowrider style fucking
Yeah.
rim. It was just funny. It's funny that you mentioned that because that's kind of like how we were too, and we rode the shit out of that van, bro. Fucking driving to Mexico all the time, and that was like a big point of pride for my dad. To the point where like I had one of our uncles when the new Rams came out, when like they first came out with that fucking I don't know, like bubble.
Yeah.
Everybody wanted a fucking Ram in Mexico. All the everyone was running a Ram. And my uncle had like a brand new Ram, and he was like, "I'll trade you a Ram for your van." And my dad was like, "Fuck no, like that's my fucking van." And at that point, the van was like 7, 8 years old, and I was like, "Dad, like why didn't we trade for a fucking brand new fucking Dodge Ram?" And he was like, "Because this is my van. This is the van that let us know like it was kind of like a point of pride, right? Like this is the van that when I had the money, this is where we fucking
Huh?
went." And again, it goes to that point of like the men are the providers. Like
What? Yeah.
the men are the ones that have to maybe not show off, but like, hey, look, not necessarily like a look at me, but like, hey, like we fucking made it.
Yeah,
Like,
there's a little bit of Latinos that say, look at me, right?
yeah, I mean, there's that. There's the like,
There's
hey,
this
look at
part
me.
of us.
But to us, it was like, because my
Yeah.
dad was never the type that wore a bunch of chains, right? And fucking, but he had his house and he had his fucking car. And
Yeah.
that's what he calls it. I still don't understand. And I think that part of the toxicity, I don't know,
Yeah.
it is that show me, like, hey, I need to show you how successful I am.
Maybe.
And we see that a lot with men, with Latino, because I see this more with the men. The guys that live in a fucking cheap apartment, but drive an expensive ass fucking car.
Yeah.
And I don't see that as much from the women. Like from the women, they're usually like in a nicer living conditions,
Yeah.
maybe not a house, but
Yeah.
like a nicer like
Look
condo,
good.
and
Yeah.
maybe the car is not as nice, but they have their fucking house. And that's kind of where I grew up was like, I'd rather have a nice house than a nice car.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I don't know what that like where that falls in this cultural machismo stuff if it even does, but it is something that from our culture that I think is something that we needs to be addressed sometime. Like, do you want to have a nice car? Do you want to have a nice fucking house? Like,
I
which one is going to
mean,
help you build wealth? That car is going to depreciate as soon as you drive it off the lot, and your house is or your condo is only going to fucking create wealth for you. So just throwing that out there.
there you go. Maybe that's the next subject matter. Machismo in vehicles or machismo like
More in
in
cars.
bravado in cars. Yeah, that's funny, man. Well, Ricardo, I mean, there's so much more to jump into dominance and like, we were saying before, maybe we can find some other folks who kind of start giving their experiences as well, right? Um, there's so much to dominance and how it can show up in different ways, like we were saying, depending on the pressure of the family, how it's, how the first generation maybe been here, what's the immigrant's life looking like when it's here, and then how that cycle that kind of starts, right? If there are these pressures that kind of lead or exacerbate, right, the machismo in our culture. But yeah, man, I don't. That's a. We got some more to do. We got some more homework to do for sure.
Yeah, bro. Yeah, I think it's important to bring in some other voices. I'd like to bring in, some women eventually, but I think first we
Yeah.
need to unpack the whole male thing. So I think
Yeah.
it's important for us to maybe talk to some like older, you know, some older males, some older
Yeah. Good
Latinos from
point.
back in the day, maybe even from, the days of, when Cesar Chavez was doing his work and see what their thoughts are on where we fucking went wrong there, right?
Yeah.
Because I feel like in that situation, dude, like so much shit went wrong for this to get to that point
Yeah.
where, and the problem for me is we don't have a lot of like Latino heroes, right? Like there's not, if we're losing one, we're not gaining another one. Like to me, Dolores is someone who has always been incredibly underappreciated. Um, she's the one that came up with the, Si se puede chant. People try to, credit that to Cesar Chavez. That was her. She's the one that came up with that. She's the one that, was like an integral part of the huelgas, of the fucking boycotts, along with other leaders. There's some Filipino leaders that people don't even know about.
Yeah.
They were, integral to that whole movement. So it just, to me, it's sad um, that we're losing somebody who people used to look up to.
Yeah.
But at the same time, it's kind of sad that we looked up to him in the first place. Like, it's sad that it got to the point where you're like, we didn't know all this shit. Like if we would have known this from before, and I think that's for me, that's one of the big points of pride
Yeah.
from from all this is happening is from the Latino community. We were like, hey, like he's a pedo, fuck him, get
Yeah.
rid of him. Like literally in 2 days, streets that were named after him were fucking like renamed. Statues were covered up
Yeah.
or taken down. Places that were named after him, like fucking right away, were like, yeah, we're not participating in Cesar Chavez Day this year.
Yeah.
The freaking, the United Farm Workers was one of the first organizations that was like, yeah, we're not celebrating Cesar Chavez this year. And you know, when people, when the fucking MAGA are like, well, what if there's Democrats on the Epstein list? Do you still want all those names on? I was like, bitch, we just canceled fucking Cesar Chavez. What do you think?
Like that, right? Yeah.
Cesar, we love like fucking, especially Chicanos love fucking Cesar Chavez. All
Yeah.
the fucking murals, all the streets, all the
Yeah.
holidays, and we just fucking like that canceled because we found out that he was a fucking pedo. So yeah,
Yeah.
we don't give a fuck.
Yeah.
Like what? Why? What's your excuse with that guy
Right.
in the orange guy in the White House?
And this,
What's your excuse?
and, and to your point, right? There's maybe that's kind of where we wrap this up. To your point, look at what this generation's done. They saw it, they said, no, we're good. Right? And that's maybe, to a lot of people shocking, even to ourselves, shocking that it happened so quick. But that's what the moment called for, right? And so in our own lives, it doesn't have to be this big, huge leader that we have to, we find some dirty history about. It can be in our day-to-days, right? We start learning and we start teaching our boys and we start teaching our girls, that shit has to stop right there. We can't let one thing slide into something else. We can't let the group around think, oh, no, 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 it's all right. We'll let this thing happen just this one time. Things have to be cut off right away and they have to be addressed right away. And then the structure around us need to be able to support that. So, yeah, man. I mean, like I said, this dominance conversation just to scratching the surface. I think this is super helpful, almost kind of cathartic, right? We get to talk about some of this stuff too. Kind of do deep dives in our own histories and little families. But yeah, I think this was a good way to kick it off. We can get into dominance, we can get into strength, and how that can get toxic is the idea of strength within families, like physical strength. So many things to talk about, Ricardo. So many things to talk about. But I'm glad we did this, brother.
Yeah, bro. Me too, man. Thank you for coming to me with this, man. Because I think I want people to know that this was your idea. Like you're the one that.
Ah, Had the
hey,
little
this is
ping.
fucking heavy. We should talk
Little
about it. And I
ping.
was like, oh shit, like, yeah, you're right. It is something heavy that we need to talk about.
Yeah,
So I appreciate you like thinking of me and coming to me and
absolutely.
like partnering with me on this because you're right. It's fucking important.
Yep.
With something that we need to explore even more, and hopefully we can bring some more people in.
I think so, man. I think so. And I trust you, and I trust to have this conversation. Let's see where this goes. And yeah, let's call it a wrap. It's already 11, about to be 11 at night. We both got early mornings probably tomorrow. So,
All
all
right,
right,
man.
man.
I'll
Glad
see
we
you.
did this.
Ahí nos vemos.
Peace.